So I've been saving this Dharma talk for a long time. I had a bunch of images stored in a folder, and I finally decided it was time to bring it out. And I looked for when we were going to have an in-person Dharma school, and it was May 1st. So I decided to get myself organized, put it in a PowerPoint, and present it today. It's funny things kids say, and it's kind of we're going to kind of look at the difference between perhaps we think people are being foolish, but oftentimes it's just a difference in perspective. So we're going to kind of look at that today. So, I often think I see things clearly and everybody else is just not getting it. But it's often, a lot of times we're presented with a false choice, right? It's not an either or, it's usually an and. I've mentioned this before. I listen to a podcast, Left, Right, and Center, and usually it's a combination of the left and the right meeting in the center to solve problems. But right now, we end up not picking either the left or the right because we're arguing so much and we're not really making any progress. And a lot of times I feel like, well, we could just try both. So in Buddhism, there's kind of two main obstacles in Buddhism. The first one, and some schools focus on this, there are passion obstacles, kleshas, blind passions. So the problem is our emotions, our cravings, our desires, and that's something that we kind of need to focus on and damp down. So that's one kind of half the school of thought. And then kind of on our side of the house, there's another kind of obstacle, and it's our view obstacles. So we just don't see things clearly. And our anger and our frustrations are kind of a byproduct or a side effect from just not seeing things clearly. And that's usually why we argue with others. A lot of times we're coming at it from a different direction, and then we can't communicate because each side kind of has some assumptions in their mind. And so we're going to look at a lot of examples where when the assumptions differ, we argue. And that goes on a lot. And then the Four Noble Truths can be kind of written in two different ways. I've seen this one a lot that emphasizes on passion obstacles. So life is suffering, and the cause is our cravings and desires. That's the main problem. And so we need to try to remove these things through discipline and maybe monastic practice. And this is achieved by the Eightfold Noble Path. But this is the version I kind of like. And the Eightfold Path the Four Noble Truths actually kind of changed its emphasis as it moved from India to China. And in India, it had a lot to do with cravings and desires and monasticism. And as it entered into China, I noticed in the books I was reading, it started to focus more on a seeing problem and insight rather than desires and craving and discipline. So there's kind of a change in emphasis as it travels. So you could write it this way if you wanted to emphasize view obstacles. There is suffering in life, and the cause is a seeing problem, and the cure is insight. And what we need to do is just walk the Eightfold Path every day. That walking that path itself is awakening, it's an activity. So it's not a byproduct, it's the activity itself. So like saying Namo Amida Butsu, chanting, listening to the Dharma, that itself is awakened activity. It's something we do, it's a process. So for the Eightfold Noble Path, the first one is listed as right view. And in the United States, it gets listed, right view, right thought, right speech, right, 8 times. And we had to memorize this to become a minister in Japan. I had to know these in order. So the Dharma School kids taught me, Veronica the spider even likes Mickey Mouse. So I went through that in my head, view, thought, speech. But there's an asterisk here. So there's a big asterisk here. There's an article on the Eightfold Noble Path written by John Allen on the internet. I don't know who he is, but I really liked it. And he gives us kind of a warning about getting stuck on the word right. The word right actually comes from an Indian Sanskrit term for sama, for the word sama. And this is the word that we kind of derive the English word summit from, kind of peak. So it has nothing to do with right or wrong. It's kind of like the summit of thought or the summit of speech. And he says the word sama means proper, whole, thorough, integral, complete, and perfect, related to the English word summit. It does not necessarily mean right as opposed to wrong. However, it is often translated as right, which can send a less than accurate message. For instance, the opposite of right awareness is not necessarily wrong awareness. It might simply be incomplete. And then he goes on to say that the use of the word right 8 times may make for a neat or consistent list of qualities and translations. The downside is that it can give the impression that the path is a narrow and moralistic approach to the spiritual life. He says that he uses a variant interpretations for each one so you can consider the depth of meanings. What do these things mean in your life? So what you could do, and what he did, is instead of right view, he calls it complete or proper vision. So it's not that your view is wrong, you just may not be seeing it clearly or completely. So I wanted to show you some examples from kids in school and also some of my own. When I first read these, I thought the kids were goofing off, and I thought they were being disrespectful to the teacher. But as I read them more and more, I think the kids are being very honest, and I think the questions were poorly written, and the teacher knew what she meant when she wrote the question, but all those assumptions aren't clear in the question. And I feel like the kids got it marked wrong, and it was kind of unfair. I think they should have got extra credit. So this one I like a lot. It said, imagine that you lived at the same time as Abraham Lincoln. What would you say to him or ask him? And this person wrote, I tell him not to go to a play, ever. Never go to the theater for your whole presidency. That's a really good advice. I probably would have asked about why are all the generals in the Civil War of the North not as good? Or what was the problem with Grant? What was he doing? But this is probably the best advice you could give Abraham Lincoln. And I think it's an honest answer by a 3rd or 2nd grader. And then I thought this one was good. I'm a math major. But it says find X. And the person circled X and said, here it is. It's right here. I could find it like that. I didn't even have to study. The teacher should have said solve for X, right? So, I don't know, it's possible this child was goofing around, but the question is poorly written. And I think it's wrong and they got a 0, and I don't think that's fair. This one, it must be like earth sciences, and the question must have been what kind of rocks are there? And there's, I can't read that first one, igneous, sedimentary, metamorphic, or a pet rock. I guess the answer was sedimentary rock. And then the extra credit was, what is the strongest force on Earth? And I think she was looking for gravity, but gravity is actually one of the 4 fundamental forces, and I think it's the weak force, so that's not true. But this person wrote love. Love is the strongest force on Earth. And they got it wrong. God, what a depressing class that is. So I thought that was a really wonderful answer myself. And then I really like this one because I'm a computer programmer. It says right, less than, or greater than, and then the person just wrote or. So I know that 0.5 is less than 1, right? I would have gotten these right. But I wanted to show you this. The more I thought about it, in computer science, we have things called delimiters. It tells the compiler where the tokens are and where you read up to and how to chop up things into words. And a delimiter, it's like a parentheses, but it can also be a greater than or less than sign. So if you look at HTML code ever, it'll have like these little greater than and less than signs, and then in the middle it'll say password or parameter. And what that means is drop the delimiters and fill in the parameter or your username. So when this person read this question, he thought it said right or, because the delimiters, inside the delimiters of greater than, less than is the word or. So math-wise, not great, but computer science-wise, this is an excellent answer. And I was actually a math computer science major, so I don't know which way I would have gone on this question. So at first I thought they were just goofing around, and I'm like, well, wait a minute. Those are computer science delimiters. This is my favorite. Circle the smallest number. And I mean, I think the teachers are a little bit snarky. She marked everyone wrong, but 1 is the smallest number, and then 2, and then 3. And I think she should have maybe put A, B, and C or something. But I saw this, and I'm like, they got it right. And then I like this one a lot. I think this one, the child was really trying his best, or her best. It says, Bobby has 4 dimes, Amy has 30 pennies. Which child has more? Now, if somebody's really good at math, they just know the answer. And I've heard a lot of math teachers, one of the criticisms of math teachers in high school is they teach math as if it's obvious, because to them it was, but to the kids it's not. So this child might be really good at math. He knew immediately that 4 dimes is 40 cents, and that's obviously bigger than 30 pennies, so it's obviously Bobby, probably without thinking. And then down here it says, how do you know? Show your thinking. So he's going like this. He draws a self-portrait, and he's thinking of Bobby. So she should have said, like, show your work, right? But show yourself thinking. And then this one I like a lot. My wife and I do pretty good on texting and stuff with our kids, but sometimes we don't. I really like this one. I didn't get this one at first. I think the mother's asking one of her daughters, what does IDK, LY, and TTYL mean? And the daughter answers back real quick, I don't know, love you, talk to you later. And the mom says, okay, I'll ask your sister then. But that's exactly what it means. She was answering her question. So I like that one a lot. And then this is my daughter, Emily. She had to buy 12 large beach balls for a theater group she was leading in the summer. And she went on Amazon, and she was so happy she found she could buy 20 beach balls for only $12. But when they showed up, they were this big. And I told her it's probably the diameter was in inches and not feet. So that was funny. So she really, I mean, it wasn't clear at Amazon. And then I want to show you mine that I think I've been vindicated. I've shown you this one before. There's this pet vet on Beach and Adams, and it has these 2 little symbols or drawings in the lower left and lower right corner. And when I looked at it, this is what I saw. It looked to me like a gorilla, like there's 2 ears, and then there's a gorilla facing in on each side. And I said to my wife, as we were driving home, I said, I don't get this veterinarian at all. Because I said, who in Huntington Beach has a gorilla or a monkey or a chimp? This is insane. They're going to go out of business. And Linda said, no, it's not a monkey. It's a double silhouette of a dog and then a cat. So I was like, meh. So, but listen, this is what happened, I swear. A year after I showed you this and I gave this Dharma talk, about 3 or 4 years ago, they changed their sign to this. They changed their sign. They got rid of the, I think everybody was bringing in their gorillas. And they finally said, you know, John's right. We're going to have to replace our sign. So I actually wanted to be right so much that when I saw this, I parked my car and I got out and I actually took this picture and I said, I'm going to show this to OCBC someday that I was right. That was a monkey vet. And then this one I always tell. I went to UCLA, and UCLA played their football games at the Rose Bowl. So I vaguely knew where Pasadena was, but I have a really bad sense of directions. So after I graduated, I was going to have a job interview in Pasadena. And they said, go north on the 405 and take the Ventura Freeway. And so I said, okay, I'll do that. And this is before Google and Waze and all that. So when I got here, it said Ventura, and I took the Ventura Freeway, like she said. And I'm driving along, and I'm going really far for a really long time. And I go through Camarillo. And then, like, the next city is, I think, Santa Barbara or Oxnard. And I'm thinking, you know, when I went to those football games at UCLA, I don't think we went to Santa Barbara. And so I had to stop and call. And I was supposed to take the 101 Los Angeles, not Ventura. But that's not what she said. And my dad was really mad at me. He thought I was a moron, and how could you be so dumb? And I got to the job interview 2 hours late, and I didn't get the job. I didn't get the job. So there are two kinds of paths. There's kind of the path of removing cravings through discipline, and then there's the path of gathering insight through self-reflection. So rather than thinking about right view, I think most Americans, when they first come to Buddhism, they think that it's what we should be seeing. It's a what thing, like we're not seeing things right. It's a what problem. So I would suggest maybe from these examples, we tap down the what a little bit, and we worry a little bit more about the how, about how we look at things, how we perceive things, how the other person is seeing things. And so I think this is what we try to do in our tradition. And one of the books I've read that was very difficult about Jodo Shinshu, and you got to think about it for a while, but it said for Shinran, awakening might be to just realize that this is how your mind works, right? You always see things from your perspective. You never see things 100% clearly. And once you realize that, right, just realizing this is just how our brains work, it makes your mind more supple, you're more understanding, you're more forgiving, you're more open. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So insight is really just realizing this is good as it gets. This is how my brain works. And actually trying to strive to seeing it the right way takes you off the path. It takes you off. The best you can do is see it from your perspective and then share that perspective with others to try to get maybe a better overall understanding of life. And so I wanted to be very careful today. I kept trying, Linda, my wife, always asks me, what is your talk about? And I had to think a lot. It's not about being foolish, and it's not about getting rid of these mistakes. It's maybe realizing that, this is how we work, this is how we talk. When we talk to another person, we're usually dealing from a different set of assumptions or facts. And I think that's why this country's arguing so much, and we're having so much difficulty. Each side thinks they're right, and nobody's listening. And this causes, it causes a lot of anger and hatred, and also we just don't make any progress. We don't get anywhere. There's a lot of examples, and it's hard to talk about in the United States, but there's a lot of examples where when they tried both, it worked better than when they tried one or the other. But it's hard to talk about these examples in mixed company because people will get upset. It's very difficult to try to find that middle. I'll tell you one real quick. They did reproductive education in high schools, and they could have either taught abstinence or responsible behavior. And they don't really experiment on high school kids. We're not supposed to do this. But I guess at some school district, instead of doing one or the other, they tried both. Like, you need to really be safe and careful, and abstinence is better. And when they taught both, they found that teenage pregnancies and STDs went down. But we don't usually do that in the United States. It's an argument of one or the other. And it seemed very effective, but it hasn't been adopted because we're polarized in our thinking. And so there's many examples like that.